Dear students, the lecture for today is the articulators and mounting the cast on articulators. Articulator. The articulator defined as a mechanical device which represents the temporomandibular joints and the jaw members to which the maxillary and mandibular casts may be attached to simulate jaw movement. Now, this device, there is a purpose of using many devices and tools in a dental lab. So, the purpose of an articulator, first of all, is to hold the maxillary and mandibular casts in a determined fixed relationship. Also to simulate the jaw movements like opening and closing, in term also to produce border movement, that mean extreme lateral and protrusive movements and intra-border movements. So we have many movements within the mandibles, so the purpose of an articulator is to mimic all of these movements regarding to the mandibular movement. This is the main purpose of an articulator. Now, what the uses of an articulator? What the benefits of using articulator in the dental lab? First of all, the articulator used to diagnose the state of occlusion in both the natural and artificial dentition. In terms of vision by the practitioner or the clinician or the dentist inside the patient mouth, there are many details cannot be identified unless we have a copy of this in terms of using a tool or device like an articulator and to diagnose the state of occlusion on it. Now, also the uses of articulator is to plan dental procedures based on the relationship between opposing natural and or artificial teeth. That means if we have a partial denture opposing complete denture or opposing natural teeth or opposing another restoration like implant or fixed prosthesis, so the plan of procedure will be more clear in terms of identifying these within a device like the articulator. Okay? Now also the articulator aids in the fabrication of restoration and prosthodontic replacement. It will be easy to mimic all the relationship between the upper and the mandibular edentulous, for example, or dentated arch in terms of can be accessed easily inside the lab and to fabricate the restoration. Otherwise, it is difficult to replace the restoration in direct way within in terms of partial denture or complete denture inside the patient mouth. Now, also it's used to correct unmodified complete restoration. This is generally in terms of using articulators, whether in removable partial denture or for complete denture or any restoration need to be constructed manually rather than digitally. Okay, so we need to correct or modify some in case of, for example, relining, rebasing. This will be easy and more accurate use such a device to be corrected and modified according to the main important points. Also, the main and the most commonly uses for the articulator is to arrange the artificial teeth. All these uses were important to be used with a device like articulator. Now, we have the requirements of an articulator. To use the articulator, for example, there is a requirements to use it. That means what we are looking for from the articulator to mimic or to achieve the goals that we are looking for. First of all, the articulator should hold cast in the correct horizontal relationship. Okay? Also should hold the cast in the correct vertical relationship. What's that mean? If we recorded a relation of the upper maxillary to mandibular relationship in the patient mouth, this should be mimic, the articulator should mimic these, the two members for the upper and lower members in the articulator mimic the way that they hold the cast as that in the patient mouth with all the angles. Okay? The cast should be easily removable and reattachable. In some types of articulators, we have a magnet table, we have a screw table. This will be easy for the technician to work away from the articulator and then to reattach it to the articulator in terms of using many techniques away from the articulator and then to be easy manipulated and then reattached to the... but it should be easy and have accurate access to this without changing any details, or the attaching should be firm and accurate as its origin. Okay. Also, it should be provide a positive anterior vertical stop incisal bin. The incisal bin should be properly attached. There is no error within the articulator. Otherwise, the maxillomandibular relationship that mimic from the patient mouth and recorded in the articulator, there is a change with it, and this will affect the vertical dimension. So the most important thing is the incisal bin. And also it should accept Facebook transfer record. Why? Because the Facebook recording many guidelines within the facial profile with the TM joint and the position of the maxilla to the mandible, the relation, whether it is a class 1, class 2, class 3, and any anomalies can be recorded or identified by the Facebook to the articulator. Also, from the requirements, we need also the articulator to be open and closed in hinge movements. That means it's easy to be moved with the hinge movement. There is no friction within the movement. It is easily to be moved, opened and closed. It should be made of non-corrosive and rigid material that resists wear and tear. That means the using of this articulator for a long time of period, for 1, 2, 3 years, it should not affected by the solvents probably we are using, or any other materials or liquids which may affect this articulator. So most of the material used to construct the articulator is stainless steel material, non-corrosive material like titanium in terms of articulators for implant purposes, and any other polymers which is not wearable. Otherwise, that probably the moving of the part which it is mimic the condyle may be weird, and when we transfer the degree of the within the Facebook, the degree of the TM joint angle in terms of upper and lower member, this will be transferred incorrectly, and then to build our or to construct our restoration in a wrong way. Also, it should not bulky or heavy, so it's easily to be moved. But sometimes we have moderate heavy. It depends on the tools that we have within and whether it is a complicated or easy articulator type of articulator. Also, there should be adequate space present between the upper and lower members. Why? This gives us enough space to give a bulk of material to for the upper and lower casts to be mounted. Also, we have a different profile patient with the vertical dimension. So if, for example, we have a patient with a long vertical dimension and we have a short articulator, this cannot be really the proper articulator to be chosen for this case. So we should have enough space between the upper and lower members to give enough area for the cast with a proper base, and also for the blaster to be used to mounting the cast with the upper or with the lower members of the articulator. The moving parts should move freely without any friction. That's mean if we have an open and close, lateral movement, protrusive, retrusive movement, forward, backward, any member, whether it is the upper and lower, depends on the type of the articulator. This should be move freely without any friction. Any friction without the articulator in this movement should be at that time exclude. This articulator cannot be used. Otherwise, there is a problem with inaccurate details will be within our restoration. The non-moving parts should be of a rigid construction, of course. That's mean if we have a plate, if we have a bar, if we have a member, the material should be firm and thick enough to hold the parts. Now, what the advantages of an articulator? What the benefit of it? We have mentioned previously that the uses of it. Now, the advantages of its properly mounted cast. The properly mounted casts allow the operator, whether they are a practitioner or dental technician or any operator, to visualize the patient's occlusion, especially from the lingual view. Of course, within the viewing and diagnosis point of view, for the practitioner or the dentists, there is a limited view within the oral cavity, which this can be easily give a proper visualization for patient occlusion using the articulator with the lingual view on it. Okay, now we have many patients, they have a cooperation and they do not like to be examined for a long time with the open mouth. So in this term we can take an impression for them, make a cast for them, and then taking the maxillomandibular relationship with the face bow and transfer this to the articulator. So so we can diagnose this case more accurately to find out what the plan for this patient, the term of patient and cooperation patient. Okay, so the articulator will be can be used instead of the direct vision inside the patient mouth. Also, reduce chair time, patient appointments time. That means we have many techniques that need to recheck with the patient. Sometimes we're using the accurate details of the cast within the articulator to avoid disappointment. Like if we have a complicated type with accurate articulator, giving all the movements like the patients, so we don't need to check every step of our work in the patient mouth, giving a multi-appointments. So we can check everything and we can give one appointment later on to check that for once. Okay, now within the excess of the using of the articulators with the cast, the patient's saliva, tongue and cheek are not factor when using an articulator, so it is easily to construct our restoration and to find out how we can contouring everything without the interfering of the patient tongue, saliva, using saliva ejector, or sometimes the cheek, or the difficulties from the patient from proper closing and opening in terms of checking. Okay, now we are coming to the classification of an articulator. Generally, several classifications of articulators were proposed. The most popular methods of classification articulators are either first based on the theories of occlusion, and this is depend on the theoretical way, whether in occlusion, in contact, or free way, in rest, or whatever. Now, also, second, based on the type of interocclusal record used. With the type of interocclusal record used, that's mean this depends on the practitioner or the dentist. Third, based on the ability to simulate jaw movements, that's mean this is only opening and closing, moving right and left, giving a protrusive backward, forward, backward movement for the lower part or the upper part, it depends. And finally, based on the adjustability of the articulator, okay? The most commonly used and based for every type of restoration based on the adjustability articulators, and this classified also into a non-adjustable articulator, semi-adjustable articulator, and fully adjustable articulator. So starting, for example, with the non-adjustable articulator, the non-adjustable articulator, these are the simplest articulator available. They can open and close in a fixed horizontal axis. They have a fixed condylar path along which the condylar ball can be moved to simulate lateral and protrusive jaw movement. Okay? Also, we have the incisal guide pin. Ride on an inclined plate in a fixed inclination. So it's open and closed in fixed horizontal axis. The condylar path fixed. And the condylar bores simulate the lateral and protrusive jaw movement. And the incisal guide pin, inclined plate in a fixed inclination. Okay, and the most popular type of this non-adjustable articulator, Hanau Mean value articulator. They called it as a Hanau Mean value articulator. These are non-adjustable articulator, as at the image on the right side, designed using fixed dimensions derived from average distance between the incisal and condylar guidance. Okay, of the population. The condylar guidance equivalent to clinoid fossa. So every slide I mention condylar guidance, just put in your mind is the clinoid fossa in the mandible. Okay, because we have condylar guidance and the condylar element. Okay, which equivalent to the mandibular condyle. So the condylar guidance mimic the clinoid fossa. Condylar element mimic the mandibular condyle. Okay? This Hanau Mean value articulator, the condylar guidance, that's mean the clinoid fossa, equivalent to clinoid fossa, attached to the lower member. And the condylar element, which is the mimic the condylar mandibular condyle, is attached to the upper member. Okay, and this is different from the real one, of course, but what we have now to discuss, this is related to the upper and lower member. So the Hanau Mean value articulator, the upper member, it's a triangle frame, as at the image on the right side, with base of the triangle placed posteriorly. So the base of the triangle located posteriorly. The apex of the triangle contain a provision to accommodate the vertical rod, which is the incisal pin. Now, the vertical rod can be locked in position within the upper member with the help of thumb screw. The two condylar elements that represent, as we mentioned previously, the mandibular condyle, are seen projecting on either side of the base of the triangle. Okay? Also, they articulate with the condylar guidance of the lower member. Now, the maxillary cast is attached to the upper member during articulation. So the upper member triangular, the base posteriorly, the apex contain provision accommodate with the vertical rod. The vertical rod locked with the upper member with a thumb screw. Two condylar elements projecting from either side of the base, and the maxillary cast is attached to the upper member during the articulator. This is for the upper member with the Hanau Mean value articulator. Now the lower member, it is an L-shaped frame with horizontal and vertical arms. The horizontal arm is triangular in shape and corresponds to the upper member. Just look like the horizontal one. It's a triangle in shape and corresponding to the upper member. That means the base at the back and the apex in front. The apex of the triangle of the horizontal arm contains the incisal guide table, as at the image on the right side, the most right part of it, the end of the L shape, okay? This is the incisal guide table. The vertical arm is rectangular, containing the condylar guidance. You can notice the condylar guidance. It's like a slot, which is at the beginning from the L shape, at the top, at the upper portion. Okay? This is the non-articulator. Now we are going to start with the semi-adjustable articulator. The semi-adjustable articulator, they have a adjustable horizontal condylar path, adjustable lateral condylar path, adjustable incisal guide table, and adjustable intercondylar distance. The degree and ease of this adjustment differ, of course, from type to type, but they are all called the semi-adjustable articulator. There are two types of semi-adjustable articulator. These are the argon and non-argon type. So what's the difference between the argon and non-argon types? Now we shall start with the argon, for example. This is the semi-adjustable. This is most commonly used by the many technicians and practitioners. The argon articulator, the condylar element is attached to the lower member of the articulator. Now, I would like you to focus on many things, dear students, whether it is argon or non-argon. So where the condylar element will be and where the condylar guidance will be, okay? The condylar element represented by what? As we mentioned previously, the mandibular condyle, and the condylar guidance, which it is represented by the clinoid fossa. So you can imagine where in this type of articulator, as an argon or non-argon, the condylar element attached to whom? To the lower or to the upper member. This is the main difference between them. And this according to the guidelines of the company, to make it easy for the practitioner to use, to move the upper part rather than the lower part, because when we are constructing a denture, the simple one, the non-adjustable, the hinge movement, shall we open the articulator in a way that all the two casts become not stable, while in this case the upper part and the lower part will be stable with the cast, okay? So with the argon, the condylar element attached to the lower member of the articulator, and the condylar guidance attached to the upper member, okay? This articulator resembles the temporomandibular joint. The condylar guidance is the mechanical analog of the glenoid fossa. Now, what are the advantages of the argon articulator? The face bow transfer easily, a closer plane, and the relationship of the opposing casts are preserved when the articulator is open and closed. Okay? Now, this is the main characteristic for the argon type. Now, the non-argon semi-adjustable articulator. These articulators have the condylar element attached to the upper member and the condylar guidance attached to the lower member. So this is the reverse the temporomandibular joint. So the argon one is the same or mimic the temporomandibular joint in real character, but the non-argon, that means vice versa, which is the condylar element attached to the upper member, and the condylar guidance to the lower member. The condylar element, upper member, condylar guidance, lower member. Okay? Also, we have within this type the Hanau wide view articulator. It is one of the semi-adjustable articulators. It is a semi-adjustable argon articulator, type of the argon one, and mostly they use the argon because it's mimic the temporomandibular joint. It is one of the most commonly used instruments, accepts face-bow transfer, and it is capable of hinge and lateral movements. So we have hinge and lateral movements, and it's easy to transfer the maxillomandibular relationship and the profile of the temporomandibular joint in relation the maxilla to the TM joint. All the relation can be really easy to be transferred to it. The design of the articulator is very complex, of course, and it needs more professional expertise in this. The Bennett angle qualified the horizontal divided to 8 plus 12. This is the Bennett angle, which can be calculated from this type of articulator. The last one we have the fully adjustable articulator. These are capable of adjusted to follow the mandibular movement in all directions, just like the real movement of the mandible. These articulators have numerous adjustable readings which can be customized for each patient. So it is very complicated. They are not commonly used because it is of complexity. For example, steward instruments, there are many readings we need to transfer from the patient, but really using of them, giving an accurate restoration with the less errors coming from the improper handling or working in terms of using these instruments. One of the disadvantages of this full adjustable articulator is their use demands a high degree of skill on the part of the clinical and technical personnel. Otherwise, that whatever the clinician doing the readings, the technician cannot be handled, and vice versa. That means if the clinician or practitioner cannot be really know how to use it, cannot, and then the technician cannot deal with it properly. So it needs for clinical technical personnel, that means skillful practitioner. Clinical procedures are time consuming because we have too many readings to be recorded from the patient, and of course these instruments, because of this complexity, they are expensive instruments. Now we discussed all the mainly types of articulators, depends on the adjustability. So we will move to the way of using the articulator in term of mounting. Okay. Mounting is the procedure of attaching the maxillary and mandibular cast to the articulator in their recorded jaw relation, which it is called articulation. So the mounting is the procedure of attaching the maxillary and mandibular cast to the articulator, and the attaching of these in a recorded jaw relation called articulation. Okay. Now the most important thing within the mounting is the mounting of maxillary and mandibular cast. Okay. Now most of the theories they're using mounting the lower part of the cast and then the upper part, while many theories mounting of the maxillary cast to the mandibular. What I've using with the most of my students and recommended is to have the maxillomandibular relationship with the occlusal bite registration. Okay, and then mounting the maxilla, because the maxilla is the most stable within the upper part, is mimic the maxillary arch, which it is related to the TM joint in terms of using Facebook. So first of all, we can mount the maxillary cast onto the upper member, and then we just convert the articulator upside down and then continue mounting the lower part. Mounting of maxillary cast. The maxillary cast is attached to the articulator using the orientation jaw relation records. The maxillary cast should be placed in auxiliary water for at least 5 minutes for better adhesion of the cast to the mounting plaster. Otherwise, the cast will be dry and there is a detaching between our layer, the new layer, within the old cast. And of course, there is a remarkable point should be notched on the base on the cast to make sure that it is maybe later on we can demount it in a proper way and easily. Okay, if we are using a magnet or we are using a screwed plate with the articulator, we should put in our minds to lubricate the slots of the or the most of the details of these rings with a little bit of petroleum gel to make sure that will be easily demounting when we are going to later on in a step of preparing for flasking. Okay, now the maxillary cast is placed onto the record base of the occlusal rim. Then the relatively thick mix of dental plaster is mixed and placed over the maxillary cast, as we notice at the image on the left side. And then spray-ting medium should be applied over the maxillary cast, not all of it, just a little bit in many areas to avoid detaching of the maxillary cast from the mounting part of it. Now the upper member of the articulator is closed and the mounting plaster is contoured to obtain a good finish. Once the plaster of Paris plaster material set, we shall then mounting the mandibular cast. The mounting of mandibular cast is mounted after recording the tentative vertical and centric jaw relation. The articulator with the mounted maxillary cast is inverted upside down to aid in mounting the mandibular cast. Okay, as we notice with the image on the right side, then the maxillary occlusal rim is placed on the maxillary cast. The mandibular occlusal rim is positioned over the maxillary occlusal rim using the centric relation records. The mandibular cast is placed on the lower occlusal rim. It should be soaked also in auxiliary water before mounting to make sure it can be easily mounted and to absorb the liquid, absorb most of the consistence from the other mix, and to set properly together. The mandibular cast is attached to the lower member of the articulator using a dental plaster to uniform to avoid any plaster to go through the details of the cast, whether they are complete partial restoration or whatever. The procedure is similar to that described for mounting the maxillary cast. Okay. This is one of the easiest way to mounting the maxillary mandibular cast, and of course this is different in terms of complete denture and partial denture, but generally have the same main points and steps. So dear students, the question for the next week will be mentioned the general classification of an articulator, and I would like to say thank you for you to follow me in this lecture and prepare for the quiz for the next week, and take care. Thank you very much.